Guys, what you're looking at is an image I put together, and it goes back to the books of J.R.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings and all. And instead of burning books in that book series and the movies, they were burning the large trees. They were tearing down civilization. They were destroying the resources of the planet, guys, to build their military. If you remember, they would cut the big trees, drag them into the pit, burn them, and down there with the heat, they were building the swords and the shields and the weapons for this mighty army of Sumeron. You remember that? Well, the same thing is happening today, except right now AI is destroying all the books. We're going to take a deep dive into it. They're cutting the binders. They're scanning the loose pages into the AI scanners. Then they're burning everything. And what that does is allow them to control the narrative. In other words, if you don't have the book to go back and see if something has been changed on the after the scan, in other words, and what has been completely erased, you won't know it. And what happened in this story by Tolkien, guys, what Sumeran had done through all types of records endlessly over the years to try to find some of the secrets of how to build this military up and all of that, and he found them and he took them. Well, what happened, I'm not sure if it's in the movie, but in the book, Gandalf comes along and decides to search for a copy of those books, and that's how that happened. But here, what we're seeing, guys, is devastating to what is called the lore. The lore is not data. It is the ancient history, the knowledge, the repeated information, even the ancient chronicles of your own family. All of this is being digitized. The binders are being cut, and they are being burned. And the number one book kind of publishing regulator on the planet, the ISBN, is the one that is supplying it. They realize that they have the library of the world, and you use that as a, your book number and all of that. But what they're doing, they're offering to the AI companies these huge lots of 1,000 to 1,000,000 books. If they want to buy them, you can have them and do whatever you want to. And look, they're looking for the older books and things like that. Now, if one of the older texts has been manipulated, like many that we see now, that may not be hidden. It may not be manipulated because it fits the need of what we're seeing. But right now, that is exactly what's going on. Let's look at it just a little deeper. And guys, what happens is by destroying the original paper lore, as we're calling it, the AI giants can build a completely synthetic replacement. If you ask an AI model about a historical conflict or spiritual tradition or human rights, it will spit out a corporate approved, nearly sanitized answer. The memory eraser of this is the original text are burned and gone, just like we've seen for history. Pull the books out of the Bible, burn them, destroy them, hide them. If the original text are burned and gone, you can never prove that the AI's version of the lore has been twisted to keep people passive, compliant, or dependent on the system. Now, going back to Tolkien for a moment, guys, he actually witnessed this type of event, and I think he was from England or Scotland, somewhere in that area, and the industrialization of that time was destroying the forest, the big coal plants, things like that, forest devastation. And he wrote it in a way that would not probably bring the politicians and the government down on his head. And that's the way a lot of books were written, as a code. Even a lot of the books of Revelation were a code so that Rome would not come down on John on the island of Patmos. But think about this, and this is also coming into place now. It becomes a mental monopoly when children, students, and professionals rely entirely on centralized AI assistants to write, think, research, and understand the world. They stop training their own deep analytical brains. In other words, we see it happening now. Everyone uses AI in some form or fashion, and it will create a dependency. Why? Because you could look through 100 YouTube videos on how to fix a part on your car, say, and maybe one of them would actually have your car and the actual part, and maybe get to the point out of all of that when you can simply ask, I've got this model car and I've got this problem, and it can give you a description. That's the good part of the tools. But what it does is, when you don't have the books to read, when all of that ancient lore and older lore is destroyed, people become dependent on whatever source they have. And so by depleting the old books, by destroying them completely, by being able to manipulate the data or completely erase it now, they create their narrative of the world as they want us to see it. And if the public loses this ability, guys, to cross-reference on anything, the way you do it, if you get an AI answer, you probably can dig up a book or some other article or vice versa, or whatever. But if the public loses the ability to cross-reference software responses with physical paper documents, humanity will blindly accept whatever the screen says, whatever the fathers of AI that think they are gods want you to understand. The destroyers of data effectively become the unchallengeable judges, juries, and authors of human thought. Their new empire rising out of the ashes of the broken dams and reservoirs and the overheated poles. Now, even the old movies since the days of Tolkien have talked about it. We've seen it. Remember 1984, the George Orwell wrote? His main character worked at the Ministry of Truth, where his entire job was to take old newspapers, rewrite them to match what the government wanted people to believe today, and throw the original physical copies down a pneumatic tube into a furnace called the memory hole. Orwell could come up with some names, couldn't he? But that's exactly what we're seeing now, and it's been something that's been happening since the beginning of man. One side did not want man enlightened. The other side did. Now, we have that same memory hole tube now, guys, but it's the industrial paper shredders and these big warehouses that scrap this data and burn the copies. Now, I did a little dive into what companies are doing it, and Google is not one of them. As a matter of fact, Google started something way before this about, it's like a seed bank for books. They would borrow the books from libraries, they would scan them, and then very carefully hand them back to the libraries. But now it's completely different. And you've got, I think it's the guy that's head of Anthropic, and one of them, and he stepped away. He was concerned about where AI was going, or that is the impression that he put forward. But what he's doing, guys, he's the money man behind getting these books burned and scrapped. And if you want to do some of your own research on this, this is a list of some of the information, guys, from AI companies buying antique books for LLMs, from YouTube to Reddit. Rare and antique books are being destroyed after they're being scanned. AI companies are buying antique books, ingesting them, and destroying them, just like in both the old books and the newer books, if you want to call Orwell newer. In history, it is a newer book, but we're seeing it all start again. And then they're buying up everything, whether they keep it, destroy it, change it, or whatever, it doesn't matter, but they're buying up and emptying entire shelves from libraries, and they're attempting to buy the libraries of these big colleges. But AI labs are not just buying brand new bestsellers off the shelf. They are aggressively buying up old inventory from antique book dealers and used bookstores across North America and Europe. And the gold standard, guys, is before AI. There's no AI slop books. The pre-2022 gold standard, the open internet, is now completely saturated with AI-generated text and slop channels. If an AI trains on text written by another AI, its intelligence degrades rapidly, a disaster known as model collapse. You can see how this will end up. Pure human thought is the difference. Books published before 2022 are highly prized because they are guaranteed to be written entirely by humans, heavily edited, and free from digital AI pollution. And guys, even in Germany, specialized bookshops and the Netherlands also are reporting massive automated daily orders buying up their old unique inventories. Money can do it all. And guys, they're burning through the cash because it's trash, and we're going to find that out pretty soon. But they're putting the money that they have into physical assets, bunkers, food, storage, protection, drones, everything, deep water wells, all of that. They don't need the currency that they're burning through to collapse the banking situation. But what they're doing is, because these proxy buyers are using automated scripts to sweep up everything on book databases, like I mentioned the ISBN DB, they are inadvertently purchasing rare, out-of-print, and foreign language editions. When these books have their spines sliced off by heavy machinery, the physical copy is gone forever. The unique bindings, generational wear, and handwritten historical notes left in these margins by past readers are entirely destroyed and treated like useless trash. Why? To them it is trash. Now they have the data, again, erase, manipulate, change it so much to completely rewrite what people think and know. And guys, think about the next generation. A lot of us older ones, we read books and things like that growing up, and we have some stored memory. And if you look back, even from ancient India, even into the Hopi traditions and all, of not really wanting to write books because they could be burned easily. Think about what they did. They did memory training exercises. In other words, in ancient India, for example, one fellow may completely memorize a section of a book, but many other people will do it also. And this could go on for years of training. Again, this memory training. And then when they get back together, no books could have been burned, but they can repeat them. Look that up. Anyway, they can repeat them, and if anybody gets it wrong because there's multiple people remembering and repeating the same phrases, it will be instantly seen as something is corrupt in that data. But that is how it was then. That is why some of the Southwest tribes were not happy about certain books being read about their traditions, and especially when many of them were totally incorrect and man-made allegories. But anyway, the memory is what will be saved. Now, in the Tolkien book about this, Saruman, the evil wizard, if that's what you want to call him, doesn't destroy the forest because he hates the trees. He destroys them because he is completely, kind of like the modern AI rush, obsessed with building a massive mechanical army as fast as possible to conquer the Middle Earth. And Tolkien saw that in his day on a much smaller scale, but he could see the pattern. Now, today, these tech CEOs aren't building data centers because they want to destroy the power grid or consume all the water. They are doing it because they are single-mindedly obsessed with building the machine, the ultimate AI, and they view nature, public infrastructure, and you and I as nothing but fuel to burn. Do you understand that? I hope you do. Now, this has been taken to court on the legality of it, but they really have the loopholes to get away with it. One thing that Anthropic has done, they kind of disguised the project with a name called Project Panama. And it's what they described it in the memo that was brought up and discussed and exposed during this trial was Project Panama, not in the courtroom, but in the memo, is an effort to destructively scan all the books in the world. The memo advises discretion. Why use a code name? Because we don't want it to be known that we are working on this. Anthropic, my friends, Claude. And the loophole that they're using to get away with this is that once you buy a book or a paper product, it becomes your property. If you legally paid for it, which they're doing, then you can do whatever you want to with it. No one can put you in jail for burning a book unless maybe it's from, another religion from another country or something. We've seen that happen. But once they buy it, and they're burning through all the cash they have, every penny, even loans that they have out are going to become bankrupt because they are going to destroy the economy by burning the money also, because they're going to spend it on things like this, building the data centers, paying the people. Again, the cash will be useless, and they will have used all of the tax money, all of the other money, to buy their physical assets for survival. But if they can burn through everything now, then they won't have to worry about it. They won't need the paper money. They control the narrative also. Now, guys, how will this end up playing out? We've talked about it before, because as they rush to control everything, burn the books, everything else, and to escape into their domains, their castles, they've got one problem, and that is they destroyed the machine before it ever took full control. And the way they did it is by overbuilding to our grid. Lake Mead is now less than 5 feet away from just about shutting down. And that hydropower buffer, which we've talked about, is the life safety of the Southwest grid. And this is happening from Northern Virginia, not just in the desert Southwest, but what will happen? Frankenstein will eat the master. In other words, they're going to destroy the grid. There's no way around it. They got the horse behind the wagon in this case. They built the machinery, the data centers, without having the necessary grid. So right as they're about to think they've won this battle, that grid is going to collapse. Atlas will have shrugged the parasites off the planet that are destroying the resources. That's also in Revelation. But guys, that's what's going to happen. Now, you know I talk about the Hopi a lot because I have a massive respect for any of the ancient tribes and the ancient knowledge, way before modern technology came into place as we know it now. But they talk about something that I think is important, and it's called the Day of Purification. Now, during that Day of Purification, again, from the Hopis, and that's what we're looking at, when everything collapses, there's going to be a tsunami of chaos as far as people trying to figure out how to live without water and air conditioning and food. But what they're calling the One Hearts, the survival of the Purification Day, is you got to turn away from the chaos. You got to hold your ground as far as your principles. You got to reconnect with the earth. We know that. That's how they survived for thousands of years. Maintain your internal spiritual strength. No matter what they say or do, you know you are the Creator's child, and you have immense power because of that sovereignty. They cannot really touch you. Touch not my elect. And that's exactly who the one-hearted are. And you protect the original instructions. That's why the Hopi did not want to write a lot of information down. Those books could be burned in a battle or whatever. And that's why they hid the books that were found under the floors of some of these ancient Iraqi castles and Iranian buildings and things like that. They hid the information. But the trick was, going back to ancient India and the Hopi, is repetitious memory of the truth. That's why I'm seem somewhat repetitive sometimes, because it needs to be repeated. And again, it's a very simple way to make it to this day of purification and make it through. And again, that day is when everything changes. When you see that flash of the power grid go down, I'm sure some will say that is the blue star Kachina, whatever. We don't know. But that's a day when the blue Kachina takes his mask off and exposes himself. In other words, the mask is being ripped down from the industries, from the data centers, from the politicians, from the military, and we're seeing exactly who they are. And not only that, it is showing that their grid is down. The world has changed. You no longer have power over the people because you control the gas or the electricity or the water or the food. That's over them. Your mask has been pulled down. And on that day of purification, again, you need to already be prepared, just like many of the ancients and many of the modern tribes are. Reconnect with the earth. Maintain your internal spiritual strength. Protect the original instructions. Turn away from the chaos. Don't run into the crowd. Don't get involved in some mass chaos situation. You know it's coming. We know it's going to happen. How else are 40 million people going to survive in the desert Southwest? I'm focusing on that area because we are deep in the data of exactly what's going on there. Of course, it's worldwide. But when you look at that, guys, and you see where it's all going very quickly, Meade and Powell are about to lose electrical generation. The Earth, it will lose its power grid because they overbuilt it, but it will at the same time stop their machine. That's how it's going to work out. That's what I see. Not going to drag this out any longer, guys, but think about what I'm telling you. I refer to ancient history a lot, and even books, especially books written by authors that were hiding something from the politicians or the kings or whoever because they wanted to express it without going to jail and getting killed for telling the truth. And that would not have been a popular subject back when that industrial complex machine was really getting started. A lot of money involved, just like today. Again, we're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's a major heads up. Be safe.